everyone, this is Heather. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I've got a really fun card for you. It is an animated card using some stamps and grid from a company called Motion Crafts. And recently when I was at Michael's, I saw that they were carrying a selection of the stamps, the dies, and the grids at Michael's. I had seen these previewed online and was really excited to be able to pick them up locally. And as you can see by pulling the tab on the side here, that grid makes my little owl flutter, and it is so cute and so much fun. So I'm going to show you how the stamps come. This is, sorry for the glare, this is how they come packaged, and this is the actual set itself. I don't know if you can see that very well with all the glare, but it's got several different owls that all have motion and move, and then a large heart and 3 smaller hearts. We're going to be using this owl today, and the packaging does come with 1 sheet of grid paper, and it's already sort of tucked inside the packaging, so you can see in the store exactly how they move. And they had probably about 6 or 8 different stamp sets at Michael's, and then this is how the grid paper comes packaged. And you can use the grid paper, or they also online have a die that will cut the grids as well. So that's really fun too, and you could use it with any color of cardstock that you wanted, and your lines wouldn't be black. So I'm using a lot of different dies today. I'm using this sort of labeled and tab die, and this is from Sizzix, and you don't have to have exactly these, but something that will help you make a little tab on the side will be really helpful. And then I just used a different one for my words to put the sentiment on the front. So these are approximately 1.5 long for the smaller one and 1 3/4 for the larger one. And I think these came with my Sizzix machine. I've had them for quite some time. I think when I bought my Big Shot, it came with some dies, and these were the label dies that they came with. And then from Spellbinders, I'm using 3 different sizes of circle dies, and I'm using the 1 1/4 is the smaller. The next size is the 2 inch, and then the 2 3/4 inch. And then I'm also using a, I hope you can see that, wood grain, large wood grain die from Lawn Fawn. And the paper that you need will be a cardstock base. And I am using a Muse Studio cardstock today because it's white on one side. So it's got the color on one and it's white on the other side, because I wanted the inside of the card where I stamped my owl to be white. So if you don't have a cardstock that's white, you could just put a white panel on the inside of your card. But I really like the Muse Studio, especially for card bases. If you're using a darker color, you don't have to put another sheet on the inside to put your sentiment, or like today, we've got it white on the inside for our stamping. And then also from a Muse Studio, doesn't really matter too much that it's white on this side. I've also got a medium brown tone. So the cardstock base is just a standard 8.5 by 11 sheet that I've cut and folded and scored in half, and then just trimmed down the brown to fit over top. So that's 5 1/4 by 4. And then you're also going to need a sheet of the grid paper, and I cut mine down so that the height of the paper is the grid paper is 4 by 3/4. And you might need to fidget with that a little bit, just depending on your adhesive. We'll get to that in just a little while. So I've gone ahead and, just to save time, done my wood grain background. So because I'm using cardstock that's only got color on one side, I laid it down face down with the color towards the die, and I ran that through my die cut machine. And it looks like this. Hope you could see that pretty texture on there. So just to save time, I went ahead and did that ahead of time. And then also from these labels, I've used the same kind of tan color as the base. I've cut out one of the smaller labels and one of the larger labels. And then also from an extra sheet of this tan paper, I have cut my little circle opening. And I'm going to pull my base plate over and show you how I laid that out. So I am using a magnetic base plate. So your plates may be different in your particular die cutting machine. So you may, your sandwich might look a little bit different than this. But what I did was take the larger of the round Spellbinders dies, which this is 2 3/4, and I placed the 2-inch in between, and I want to get them as centered inside of each other as I possibly can. If you don't have a magnetic plate and you're worried about it slipping, you could take a small piece of washi tape or repositionable tape and tape them in place so that they don't slip. And place your paper down, and again, because I'm using this Amuse Studio, I've got the white side up with the tan down towards the die cut. Make my sandwich and run that through my die cut machine, and make sure that you crank it back and forth a couple of times just to make sure that both of those circles cut out, and you'll end up with this sort of donut shape that just gives you a nice frame around the image on your card. So I'm going to pull back over my sheet that I have used the wood grain on, and I'm going to grab this Vintage Photo Distress ink and a sponge dauber. You could use any type of sponge, that you've got. And I'm just going to add some ink around the edge of that cardstock. Just ink up the edges. Doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of nice and loose. It just kind of gives it a little bit more of a realistic wooden look. So just going to go around all 4 sides with the sponge dauber. And now that I've got my edges inked up, I'm going to take the sponge dauber and just take a few little swipes across, especially where those kind of wood circles are. And just add a little bit more swipes of ink here and there. Again, it just kind of gives it a little bit more of a realistic look. I'm going to buff that out a little bit. So just add a few more little streaks around here and there just to kind of give it a little bit more natural look. And now I'm going to bring my card base over, and I'm going to adhere that wood grain to the front of my card. I'm just using a regular tape runner, but because this now has a lot of texture on the back from all those like faux stitching lines, use a good amount of adhesive so that stays down. So just applied adhesive to the back, and I'm going to center this on my card front. Get that even. And now I'm going to open it up. This is very important. Make sure that you open up your card so that you're not cutting through every single layer. And now we're going to put the 2-inch size die onto the front. So I'm going to place the die towards the center and up just a little bit. Just want to make sure that I've got enough room to put my little sentiment there. And again, just going to take a piece of repositionable tape, and I'm going to tape that down. So with this flap open, I'm going to place this on my cutting plate, sandwich it, and run that through my die cut machine. And so that's cut through both those layers of cardstock. Take the die off, and so you could save this for a different project, but we don't need it now. We're going to set it off to the side. So now we have a nice opening on the front of our card, and we want to go ahead and stamp our owl on the card. And I'm using a stamp positioner so that I can be sure that I get this lined up exactly where I want it. So I'm bumping my card down in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to use my magnets to hold that in place. And now I can take my owl stamp and make sure that he's going to be exactly in the center of that opening. So you just want that to be straight up and down. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, getting it in the right place. I'm going to lift up the lid, pick up that stamp, and now we're going to ink, and I'm using the same Distress ink that I used to ink up the edges of the wood grain. Stamp that out really well. And because I wanted my owl's eye and the little heart on his belly to be a different color, I'm just taking a Q-tip and I'm picking up that brown ink and kind of wiping it away from those areas. And then I'm going to take a water-based marker. I've just got some Pentel markers. You do want them to be water-based. Something like Tombow works really great. So I've got a red and an orange. And so now I'm filling in the eye and the heart. The eyes with the orange and the heart in the red. And I'm going to stamp that, and it probably will need to be repeated again. So I'm going to pull this over. I'm going to open up. I already know that my stamp is positioned where I want it to be. I'm going to bring this over and give it a really good press. But your stamps need to be a good, solid, kind of not necessarily dark, but just a good, crisp image, which is why it's really nice to use a stamp positioner to make sure that it will animate properly. So I need a little bit more ink on there. And so I'm just inking that up again with more of the Distress ink. And then just repeating the process, taking a Q-tip, getting some of that ink, getting the ink off the eye and off the belly. Hope you guys can see that. I know my arm's in the way because I'm a lefty. And then going over the heart, again with the red marker. And then the eyes with the orange. Like that. And again, we're gonna close the lid and push firmly. Sorry, I'm shaking the table. Okay, there we go. That looks good. And then I grab my orange marker and give him a little bit of an orange beak as well. So we take him off the stamp platform. And we're done with that. Remove that out of the way. So now we've got our image stamped on the inside. And while I have the Distress ink out, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment on the larger of the label dies. And this says "You're a Hoot," and it is from an older, Close to My Heart stamp set. I don't think that they make it any longer. Sorry, I was off camera there. But there are a lot of companies that have some really cute sentiments that work really well with birds and owls. So that says "You're a Hoot." And now we're done with our Distress ink. And so now that we're stamped and we've got this circle where we want it, we're going to make a little tab to make it easier to run for your recipient to grab a hold of the edge of the cardstock. So I'm going to take another piece of repositionable tape, and I only want to partially cut this smallest circle die. Again, this is 1.5 inch. So I'm just going to tape it where I'd like it to be. And again, I'm going to run this through my die cut machine. So I've run that through the die cut machine. I'm going to carefully peel that off. And now we have a nice little tab that makes it a little bit easier for them to grab onto the image. And we are done with the die cutting. And so now I'm going to tape up the top and the bottom of my card. And like I said, I've cut my grid paper down to about 3 3/4. And I might need to adjust that a little bit. So you want to use a really strong adhesive, because with all the movement and everything, you don't want it to come open. So I am using red liner tape, and I am going to lay my grid down. So this is what, and it's called red liner tape for obvious reasons. It's got a red backing liner on it. You could use score tape or any other kind of strong adhesive tape that you might have. And this is just the easiest way for me. There might be many other ways, but you want to make sure that your grid is going to be straight up and down. So I'm lining it up, the edge of the grid. And I know that's acetate, it's kind of hard to see the edge on camera, but I'm just lining that up with the inside edge of my card, and I'm just going to temporarily kind of tape it in place so I can figure out exactly the best place to lay my adhesive. So as straight as you can and pretty close to this bottom line of your acetate, you want to tape that down. Just trim off the excess. And again at the top, so from the folded edge of that card base right here to the end, and again trim that off just so that you're sure that your piece is going to be able to slide in and out. So we're going to take this tape off of here, the temporary tape. I'm going to pull up, let's get this out of the way, pull up my backing off of my red liner tape here. And now I'm going to close my card and press down really well. Make sure that that's adhered really nicely. Now I've got this other smaller tab die cut, and I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut it right up the center. You could use your trimmer as well. So just want to cut that in two equal pieces. And we're going to test the grid and see if it fits and moves properly or if it needs to be adjusted. So you want to kind of carefully slide that in. And if it's a little tight, which this one is, you're going to take your paper trimmer and trim off just a little bit off of the bottom. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so like I said, it's, you know, you kind of have to fidget with it just a little bit. So I've taken my trimmer and just cut a little small piece off. And let's see if that fixed it. Yeah, so that slides in much smoother now. So you can kind of test it and make sure, and it's working. It's so cute. So now I'm going to take some more of this red liner tape. Again, you just want it to be really sturdy. Somebody's going to be pulling and playing with it. Lay a piece on the back of one of those halves of the label die that we cut, and just kind of get a good idea of where you want that to grab onto your grid. And then you can pull that out a little bit and turn it over and do the same thing with the other half and just line those two halves up. And that just makes a nice little pull tab on there. And we'll just gonna line those up a little. And now we've got a tab that the recipient can grab onto. I'm gonna grab the piece that I stamped the words out on earlier, put a couple pieces of foam tape on the top, and I'm gonna take this backing paper off. And put this on the front of my card. Oh, it doesn't want to come off. There we go. And I put this in the lower left-hand corner of my card. And now we want to add our little frame around our owl. And I am just using a glue pen. I like using the liquid adhesive just in case I need to scooch things around a little bit. So I'm going to just place that around the edge and push that down and make sure that that's secure. And now we've got our finished card. And you can see how he moves, his little arms and feet flap, his little heart flutters. Isn't that just adorable? I just think these are so cute. Again, I used stamps and grid paper from Motion Crafts, and they also do have die cuts, but I wanted to see if I could figure out how to make one without using a die cut. And I think this is really cute, really fun, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out my channel. I have lots of other card tutorials there. And if you like this video, if you would give it a thumbs up, I'd be really appreciative. And be sure to subscribe so you can check out more of my videos when they come out. And thank you so much. Have a great day. This is Heather. I'll see you soon. Bye.